So I ask you, there's 1,100 homes that are just about ready to get taken out of the floodplain.
In Hammond.
In Hammond.
I think there's another 600 or so in Highland, plus structures.
Okay. And that might help me in Highland because I own property
That is correct.
And I pay on Strong Street flood insurance. So the people asked me, and the guy asked me last night, I showed the house at 7:30 last night. He said, what do you think about the flood insurance? I said, well, I mean, they are removing some homes out of the area. They're about ready to get done with these phases. What can I tell him, to be honest, as far as how long I think people in that area are going to have to pay flood insurance?
And just to give you some quick background, why it's important to me, I grew up in the 7900 block of Birch, which is you're 8000, I'm 79, you're on Munster, I was in Hammond. Saw a lot of devastating effects before 2008. There was issues. And, I mean, our first goal and our first, I guess, objective is to minimize the risk of flooding, not to necessarily get flood insurance relief. Our job is to protect the residents. Whether you seek insurance or you reduce your insurance, that's your decision based on your feeling of risk.
But it would be no longer mandated.
Correct.
So, in other words, as Americans, as a homeowner,
yes,
you can make the decision yourself whether
absolutely,
you feel that this will ever happen again, whether you want to pay $1,000 a month or a year. That's up to you.
Right. And absolutely, and that's a decision, like you said, is your decision, and we have to make that happen so that you can make that decision. Right now, for Munster, the town of Munster, for all of Gary, for reasons because the levee's been decertified, and I'll get back to that a little bit. And parts of Hammond, that is true. You can't, and so,
and I want to just say something about that. You used the word decertify, and for all those people that are cheering, and I know many of the people that just got taken out of the floodplain, and they're extremely happy with the fact that it's not going to cost them $100 a month. They can take that $100 and put it in their pocket, or they could take that $100 and throw it towards their principal of their mortgage. The word decertify could happen in the future if things aren't taken care of going forward here.
Absolutely, and I'll just cut to the point. And your question initially was how long would it take for Munster as the other part of Hammond. Hammond's going to be a little bit easier, I think. Munster a little bit more difficult, but still in the time frame that we think. We need to finish off the state line cutoff area necessarily because Illinois, as we've discussed and you discussed, because of their schools and everything else, they have no money. So when the Army Corps initially designed it, they designed it to fit into Illinois, assuming Illinois would be their local partner. Illinois backed out, said we're not necessarily interested in that. We have other opportunities to spend money on, so that's what they did. So we have to build basically tiebacks at the state line, both in Munster and in Hammond, near the Forest Avenue state line area. So we've got a little bit of work to do, but it's not out of the realm of a year, 2 years tops, I would say. And I know everyone says, oh, I've heard that before. I've heard it before. I lived 35 years there, and I'm just telling you what I see now. That is what the Corps' objectives are. We need to finish the segment in Southmore. We need to finish this upkeep of Forest Avenue in Hammond, and then we need to tie it back. Stage 7 and Stage 8. Stage 7 between Northcott and Columbia, it had a little bit of a hiccup. One of their subcontractors quit. They needed to go find another one. They're now out there working. You start seeing the work now. Stage 8, which is Walsh Construction, which is from Columbia to basically Manor in Munster and Lyman and Hammond, is going well. They'll be seeding soon. They're doing some final grading and prep work before they do it. And I think you'll see a drastic change by 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. You'll see it look a lot better than what it is now. It looks fine. The flood protection is there, which is good. But at the end of the day, it needs to look the grassy area. Now, to go back to the decertified, the Gary levees were built. The Gary levees were to the standard which they need to be. The problem is no one maintained them for the 20 years. There was no money. It wasn't anyone's fault. They just didn't have the money to do it. We currently, as we project now, have over $2 million worth of deferred maintenance, which means, you know, using your analogy, you don't take care of your cedar shake shingles on your house. You don't spray them down. Eventually, guess what? They deteriorate, and you need to either pay a big number or go a different way. and fix them. Well, that's where we're at in Gary. And not to use Gary specifically, but they are decertified. The entire levee segment is decertified.
Well, plus
no
this
one can get
project,
flood insurance.
this project's been going on for so long that they literally could have been 20 years ago that part of those things were built.
You're absolutely correct. So when it goes to the Highland and Hammond segment, which I have a property that is in Hammond that will see relief from flood insurance. The problem is we received 2 drafts for Highland and Hammond's levies. They are what they consider minimally acceptable. And last show I went over, they're either acceptable, minimally acceptable, or unacceptable, which means they're decertified. And so right now, Hammond and Highland are minimally acceptable. If you have 2 minimally acceptable gradings in a 2-year period, they become unacceptable by just the nature of having more than 2 minimally acceptable. So the important thing is you need to maintain it. We've been working with the city of Hammond and Stan Destadney and John Buck in Highland, educating them, working together to make sure that there was a lot of hard work put into that LOMAR, which is the letter of map revision. You don't want that to go away. I mean, people are probably high-fiving a little bit that, hey, look, I don't have to pay, personally, I don't have to pay $1,200 in flood insurance for the property that I own. But I also know that if we don't maintain it, and this is the truth, you go look it up on the Army Corps website, that if you don't maintain it, it becomes decertified, and everyone then has to go back into the program because the competency of the levee isn't there.
You're listening to WJOB 12:30 a.m. It is currently 13 minutes past 8 o'clock on Tuesday, September 20th. We have with us the Executive Director of Little Calumet River Basin, Dan Repay, talking a little bit about flood insurance, because it is a topic that is in the newspapers and near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. Some 1,100 people in both, I believe in the Hammond area, has that happened yet? I know they said it was supposed to happen any day now.
I received my letter Friday, I believe. It was a letter with a map, and what you do is you take that. In each community, each lender is a little bit different. If you have a local lender, it's easier to go stop in there. I have Wells Fargo, so I have to play tag with them and send them the letter with the map showing that, in fact, immediately the FEMA has indicated that I no longer am have to carry the flood insurance. And so once that happens, it's effective immediately, and they would then, if I paid my amount, then they would redeem me whatever the prorated amount is that it starts to that date, and then I wouldn't have to be required then from the following year.
So there's a lot of people that are happy right around now. 1,100 households, is that correct? 1,100 parcels?
It's around that. It's over 1,000 in Hammond, and I think it was 500 to 600 in Highland, and that includes business and other. I think there's 80 some that are they're trying to work on getting them removed.
Where was it in Highland's part?
Basically between Klein Avenue and Wicker Park. However,
that would be me. So how would I know that do I get something as an owner?
You would get something. I'm sure the town of Highland is doing something very similar to the city of Hammond is, and that would send out a notification to you of some sort. The problem is in Highland, Katy Marsh Ditch is still has some effect on you. So, I don't want to give someone a border because I don't know it exactly. In Hammond, it's a lot easier. There is no other place that would cause your problem. And in the area, I believe there's a lower area in Hammond. There's 83 houses or something, or structures.
845-1100 if you'd like to. We'll go to about 8:30, and then the town of Munster comes in. If you have any questions for Dan. And I understand people are just tired of this talk. I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm tired of listening to it, only because I think it should have been
solved.
solved.
Programming. No,
I'm just saying, because I shouldn't say the talk that you're bringing up, the talk of, well, let's segue, that your group was set up to give people some background if they're just new listeners. Some 28 years ago, there was a Little Calumet River Basin committee put together to basically build a levee from Gary to the state line.
And acquire easements.
And do all that.
Make utilities change, right.
And they thought it would be maybe 5 years, 10 years, whatever it would take. And 26 years later, they only got as far as, I think, Griffith. And we had major floods in 2005, I think, in Highland got hit real bad. And then in 2008, the big flood that hit Munster, and then there was some flooding.
There was a 2007 flood when they were in the process of building what we call Segment 5-2, which is Woodmark Country Club Wicker Park, where the river basically Heartstitch went through the bank where it was a little bit exposed and caused flooding of the area what is now Cabela's, Indianapolis Boulevard. That was the first time actually the expressway was shut down for a couple days. I have that picture sitting in my office because it was taken off the on-ramp onto eastbound 8094 off Indianapolis Boulevard looking south, and you can see Indianapolis Boulevard covered with water.
Yeah. So that all happened, and the governor came in and rightfully so said, you know what, this group's been ineffective, and there was a lot of other reasons why. I mean, it's not that simple, but basically said, I'm taking control of this. He put his 5 members in, and since then, you've been, not right away, but you were named executive director.
2010. In
2010, and you guys have done quite a bit, and you told people already where you're at with your stages, and that's kind of, you know, where we're at. So then recently, this last legislative session, the money that you had is to finish your project, but we need to maintain it, or that word decertify could come in where people have to, first of all, we have to worry about flooding again, and secondly, be mandated to pay federal flood insurance. So how do we maintain this? And you guys had a plan that was in front of the legislature, and it was removed. It never even got in front, I don't believe. And it was pulled from the floor. And then recently, George Van Til has pitched on these airwaves a Burns Conservancy District, which he's been going from community to community on. Many of the communities voted against it, and there's been one community so far that has voted in favor of that, which is Gary, which by statute has enough parcels to actually get this process rolling. So there could be competing plans on how to do it, and the reason I bring up that I'm tired of listening to it is because it never should get to that point.
I agree.
And this is where I agree with Mitch Daniels that poor leadership has led it to this, and those individuals who are pitching it is who I'm talking about. Okay, because if the whole thing came down to leadership only, and to local and to representation on boards, I could have had your group and their group together over a cup of coffee and solve this issue. Okay, because if the main thing is that it's representation, I would have your group and his so-called group and say, who needs to be on here? Raise your hand if you're an engineer, a city engineer.
I agree.
And let's solve this thing, and let's move on to the 1,010 other issues that we have in Northwest Indiana. But yet we continue to fight. And in the newspaper this morning, I'll bring it up. I don't even know if you've read it yet this morning.
I have not read the
paper. It appears
paper.
that St. John has on their agenda public discussion of a conservancy district. It says the agenda for the upcoming town council meeting was posted Monday afternoon. Among the items is consideration of a resolution rejecting the conservancy district. So you've been in politics a little bit. You were a town council or city council person in Hammond. I wouldn't think this would be on the agenda unless they have the votes for it. When you say rejecting the resolution,
yeah, I mean, in general,
we'll let it play out. But
yeah, I mean, here's the thing: we need to solve this. That's it. I mean, it's like you said, it's really like you're in business. You have to solve a problem and move on because there's 20 other that are waiting in line.
They're waiting in line.
Pressing.
Absolutely.
So,
but in Northwest Indiana, if you're a leader, you don't want to solve an issue. You want to perpetuate it. And perpetuate it so that you stay in the headlines. Perpetuate it, because that's what you do because you think you're important. And that's the exact difference between being a council person or an elected official and someone that has to run a business on a daily basis. You said it exactly right. There's 20 more problems that are coming. You don't have the. You say, let me look at this, let me assess it, let me make a smart decision, move on. And at the end of the day, you've made 20 of those, and you hope that the 19 that you made were better than the one that you made that was incorrect because you'd be out of business. I mean, it's just that's what's so frustrating in my voice and many people that call in and say they're tired of listening to these people. And the guy that's walking in is one of those people because it should have been solved.
What, causing problems?
Well, we're going to get to that later because this is good radio.